In this video, we are going to start translating the longest passage that we have looked at so far, and it is John 6, verses 25 through 35. I will be breaking it up into several videos so as to keep the videos from being super long. I also wanted to talk about some additional tenses since they will be coming up in this passage, but I decided to just put that tense, the discussion of tenses, in a separate video to keep things clear and also for people who may not be as interested in the grammar discussion. I will say, however, that the way I'm going to present the tenses is a systematic approach and not so much a rote memorization approach, so that you can see patterns, and that way when you're reading and you see a verb that you're not quite sure about, you might have an idea because of understanding some of the underlying patterns in the language. So again, I will talk about that in a separate video. So let's get started with John 6:25. Και ευρώντας αυτόν πέραν της θαλάσσης, είπον αυτό, Ράβι, πότε όδε γέγονας. Απεκρίθη αυτοίς ο Ιησούς και είπεν, Αμήν, αμήν, λέγω ημίν, ζητείτε με, ούχ ότι είδετε σημεία, αλ ότι εφάετε εκ των άρτων και εχορτάστητε. The first word, ke, we've seen before, and that means and. Evrondes means having found. It is the past participle of the verb evrisko. Evrisko is the form of this word that you would find when you look it up in a dictionary, and it means I find. In modern Greek, the word for I find is similar, very similar. It's vrisko. So this past or aorist participle is formed from the aorist or closed stem of the verb. I will be talking about the stems in the video that I mentioned, the separate video on verbs. And for this verb, the closed stem is evre. And then to that gets added the participle ending. We've already seen a participle ending, omega ni. Here we have a different participle ending. We have ondes. So ondes is the masculine plural participle ending. On, that we've seen before, was the masculine singular participle ending. So the word is evre plus ondes, meaning having found. And then we have afton, which I believe we've seen before. That is the accusative of aftos. So afton means him, and aftos means he. So we have and having found him. Peron is a preposition that means on the other side, and peron as a preposition requires the genitive of nouns that follow it. So the noun following, I thalassa, which means the sea, is in the genitive case, tis thalassis. Ipon, they said. That is an aorist form of lego, which means I say. So it has the third person plural ending on it. And it also has the aorist or closed stem for lego. Now you'll notice that lego and ipon just don't really resemble each other. It is an irregular verb here in terms of the stem, how the stem is formed. So again, the on ending shows us that this is the third person plural. So we have ipon, they said. They said afto. This is another case of aftos. We've seen aftos meaning he, she, or it. And afto is the dative case of aftos. So it means to him. So ipon afto means they said to him. Now, if you see this elsewhere, you may very well see a little tag or what's called an iota subscript under the omega. It just looks like an omega with a little tail on the bottom. And, it's hard, well, it is hard to type them, but also I feel like it's not totally necessary to indicate that, because it's no longer, in Koine Greek, this iota is no longer pronounced. It does help a bit in distinguishing forms of words, but I think there's enough information that it's probably not usually really necessary. In more ancient Greek, the iota subscript was pronounced first as a diphthong, so OE, in the case of the omega with the iota subscript. And then later on, just as a glide, it started to become kind of erased. So it would be more of a glide, like oi. And then by the time of Koine, it was probably no longer pronounced. So again, afto means to him. So just to recap, that first little bit in translation is, and having found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, O Ravi, and Ravi means rabbi or teacher, pote, pote, and that means when in Koine and also when in modern Greek. Ode means here. In modern Greek, here is edo. Interestingly, the vowels get switched around. Yegonas, that comes from the verb yinome. Yinome means I become, exist, or happen. And yegonas is a perfect active form of the verb. Perfect is a past tense, active. And it's the second person, so you, singular. And it means you have come to be. So in general, the perfect active means, or if it's perfect active, if it's second singular, it would be you have blanked. So again, for this verb, it is you have come to be here. So the word order is a little different, but they say, teacher, when have you come to be here? Apokrithi, he answered, and we have seen that exact word, and I discussed it more in a previous video. It comes from apokrinome. So apokrinome would be present. Apokrithi, past, he answered. Aftis. And this is another form of aftos, and it's plural. It is dative. So it means to them. And then we have O Isus, and that's Jesus. Jesus. It is in the nominative form. It's the nominative form of Isus. So this is the subject of the verb apokrithi, which we could also tell because apokrithi is singular and Isus is singular, whereas the indirect object, aphtys, is plural. So we have Jesus answered them, ke, and ipen. Now we saw ipon, which meant they said. So you have this ip, which we saw is the aorist or closed stem of lero. But the ending's different because this is Jesus said as opposed to they said. Ipon was they said. Now Jesus, just being one man, he, has a different ending for he, and that is the epsilon ni or n. So ipen, he said, amin amin lego imin. Now we've seen this phrase before, and it means truly, truly, I say to you. And as I've mentioned before, imin here is the dative of you, plural, you all, and so it means to you all. The nominative form of you all is imis. At the end of this video, I'm just going to very briefly talk about the pronunciation of epsilon here. This is one of the two vowel sounds in Koine Greek that is a little different, but I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to continue with the translation, and we will talk about the Koine pronunciation of epsilon and also eta at the end of this video. So, truly, truly, I say to you all, zititeme, and this means you seek me. Me means me. Zitite means you, plural, seek. It is just the second person plural form of the verb ziteo, and ziteo is I seek. There's a little accent there, an additional accent, so without me after it, it would be zitite. But because me comes after it, you have an additional accent on the end of zitite, so it's more like zititeme. And me is the accusative of ero, which is I. So in English we say you seek me, we don't say you seek I. And so here in Greek, the same thing. They don't say you seek ero, they say you seek me. You seek me. Me meaning me. Uch oti. Uch means not. We've seen that before in a couple different forms. The forms there again are uch, uk, or u, meaning not. Oti is because. So, uch oti, not because. Idate, you all saw. The ete ending here shows us that it is you, plural, you all. And this ete ending is, for you all, is also used for some verbs in the present. So it's used in the present and the past for some verbs. So when you see ete, you can think you all, or second person plural. We saw this with zitite, the ending there close to ete, not quite exactly the same because the stem of ziteo ends with an epsilon, making the ending a little different. And the verb in the present that idate comes from is orao. Orao means I see. So like I say, which is lecho, this is the stem change here going to the aorist is very irregular. You wouldn't guess that oral and either, well, I guess I'll say either, since that's what we're seeing here. You wouldn't guess that they're the same verb, but they are. So we have either, you saw simia. Simia means signs. It is the plural and also the accusative form of the noun to simion, which means the sign. Al oti, and the first word here, al, is a shortened form of Allah. Allah means but. It means but in Koine, and it means but also in modern Greek. But here, no pun intended, because the next word starts with a vowel, the alpha on Allah gets dropped. So we have al with an apostrophe, meaning but. And then oti, we saw, means because. It means because in Koine. It actually can also mean that in Koine, and in modern Greek, oti means that. The next word here is ephaiete, and that means you ate. Again, we have the ete ending, which we saw is indicative of second person plural, so it's you all ate, a past tense meaning. So it's the aorist form of estheo, which means I eat, present. Ek ton arton. Ek is from or of, and as a preposition it requires that the noun following it be in the genitive case. Not all prepositions require the genitive case. I think we've seen a couple that do, but they can also have the nouns after in the accusative or dative case. But anyway, here we have the next noun in the genitive case because it is after ek. And we have seen before o artos, which means bread. So here, ton arton is the plural and genitive of artos. So ton arton means of the bread, plural of the breads, or of the loaves, or of the loaves. So you ate of the loaves, ke, and echortastite means you were filled. So this word is a passive form of chortazo. Chortazo means I fill, and here we have not just a passive, but also the aorist form of this verb. And just in general, when you see verb endings with this, such as thite, another example is thin or thi, think aorist passive, because aorist passive endings are thi, just thi alone, or thi plus other letters. So I'm just going to translate the whole passage here once at the end, putting up the Greek text on the screen. And having found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, "Teacher, when did you come to be here?" Jesus answered them and said, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you seek me not because you saw signs, but because you ate of the bread and or satisfied. As we have seen, echortastite means you were filled or you were satisfied. And just a little bit on the meaning of, the overall kind of more, I guess you say, theological meaning of this passage. For some reason, when I was going through this translation from the Greek, it just kind of hit me that what Jesus was saying was, you seek me not because of the signs, but because you were satisfied or filled. And I in reading the English before, I thought, the signs are pretty impressive. What exactly is he saying here? And for some reason, translating the verbs, the words one by one, it just hit me that God's Word and the Gospel, knowing Jesus, is deeply satisfying, even more satisfying than signs or miracles. So it's just an example of one of the benefits of doing slow translations is that you may perhaps, understand what God's Word is saying in a better way. That is the end of the translation portion of this video. I just wanted to add a tiny bit here at the end about pronunciation, a little bit of clarification on the pronunciation differences between Koine and Modern Greek. And the information that I'm giving you here comes largely from a site called biblicallanguagecenter.com, and you can go there for a lot more information if you're interested. Specifically search for Koine Greek pronunciation on the site, and there's a very good article about it. So as I mentioned before, in Koine and Modern, the main differences are differences in two vowel sounds. So that can be broken down into two kind of categories. So the first one is the more important one, and that is the symbol epsilon and the diphthong omicron iota. So in Modern Greek, these are both pronounced E, as we have been pronouncing them. There is evidence that these two were pronounced the same, so epsilon was pronounced the same as the diphthong, and the pronunciation was different than the pronunciation of E. So in Modern Greek, you have E being the pronunciation for 5 different characters and diphthongs, which are here on the screen. Now, a more accurate pronunciation in Koine Greek would keep only 2 of these pronounced as E, and those 2 are iota and epsilon iota. The epsilon would be pronounced the same as omicron iota, and that sound would be a high front rounded vowel. And that sound is to take E, which is a high front vowel, and then round your lips. So you would have it sounding like, I'm going to do E and change it into the round. So it would be E, is the sound for epsilon. And that sound occurs in French and in German, but not in English. So it may be a little difficult for us English speakers to produce. Now the 5th of those spellings, the eta, also had a different pronunciation probably in Koine. This one is less critical, though, because while the epsilon and the omicron iota had not yet merged with the other spellings, eta was starting to merge into the E sound, represented by iota, by the 2nd or 3rd century AD. So that change was already underway, so it's not as critical. But if you're interested, the pronunciation in Koine would have been somewhere between the of epsilon, and the E sound. So those are both front vowels. Is kind of a lower, mid-low front vowel, and E is a high. So the eta or eta would have been closer, like somewhere in between. So if you say E and just move your tongue down, it would have been kind of there in the middle, something like eh. So if you want to mess around with that, go right ahead. Again, I'm going to stay with all the modern Greek pronunciations in this video series. So this resource that I mentioned, biblicallanguagecenter.com, also had an interesting note about mutual understanding if you have different pronunciations for Koine, which I thought was interesting. And that is basically that if you learn modern Greek, it's really if you learn modern Greek pronunciation for Koine, it would really not be that hard to understand a different pronunciation system such as Erasmian. And I'm just going to quote what the writer writes. He or she says that academic audiences rely on written texts and cannot be assumed to follow any extended speech, even in U.S. Erasmian pronunciation. So therefore, he argues that inertia with regard to Erasmian pronunciation, that is the argument that everybody uses Erasmian, so we can't change, is really not a good argument to keep using the Erasmian pronunciation, because the Erasmian pronunciation is just not that accurate. At any rate, you are going to find a lot, if you start looking, there's a lot of discussion on this topic about how to pronounce Koine. So you can go just look at that for yourselves. And just one more quick thing here. You've probably noticed that the character sigma has two different ways to be written, and the one on the screen now is what you use in the middle of a word or the beginning, and then the sigma at the end of a word looks like our S. So that is the end of this video. Thanks for watching.